For Unit 2's homework, we're going to work on solving some equations. In the first problem, we need to get x by itself. So the first thing we're going to do is subtract our 3 on both sides. We want to be very careful, especially as we involve a lot of negatives, so we want to make sure we're using Desmos when needed. So when we subtract negative 16 minus 3, we're going to get negative 20. We are then going to divide both sides by 4, and we're going to get x equals negative 5, right? So we want to be really careful when we are working with negatives and to make sure that we are plugging them into Desmos if needed. For the middle one, we have a couple of different options of what we can do. My guess is most people are going to look to distribute that 4, which is totally okay. So that would give us 12x plus 8 equals negative 16. Besides that, there's a secondary method that I'm going to ask a question about in a minute, but we'll continue with this problem the way we have now. So we'll subtract our 8 on both sides. Again, we're going to be very careful here as we just go to Desmos for a second to make sure that we don't make a mistake with our subtracting. So we have negative 16 minus 8 is going to give us negative 24, right? So we just want to make sure that if we're unsure, we're plugging things in. 12x equals negative 24. We will then divide both sides by 12, and x is negative 2. Those two are pretty straightforward, and then we get to a more complicated third one. So we have x plus 4 over 12 plus 2 over 3 equals 5 over 6. So we have to do some thinking before we get started, and we want to focus on our denominators. 3, 6, and 12. What we want to look at is what is the least common multiple that all 3 of those numbers can be. So what's the first thing that 3, 6, and 12 can first multiply to be? Well, I know 3 is 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. 6 is 6, 12, 18, 24. And then 12 is 12, 24, and so on. So if I just list out all the numbers I just said, we end up here. And what is the first number that they all have in common? Is that 12. Okay, so that's what we're going to multiply by in the very beginning to get rid of all of our fractions. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. This first one is the easiest because the 12 and the 12 are going to cancel out, and that is just going to leave us with x plus 4. In the middle now, the 12 and the 3 are going to simplify to 4 over 1. Okay, then we are going to take the 4 and the 2 and multiply them together, and 4 times 2 is 8. That is then going to be equal to, and we're going to look at the last one here, the 12 and the 6 are going to simplify to 2 over 1. We're then going to multiply the 2 and the 5 together to get 10. All right, so again, so we took our least common multiple between all our denominators, which was 12, multiplied it all out on top, and then we simplified as we needed. We're then going to combine our like terms here, x plus, and then 4 plus 8 is 12 equals 10. We're going to, x plus 4 plus 8 is 12 equals 10. Subtract our 12 on both sides, and we're going to get x is negative 2. So definitely a more challenging start to this problem, but once we get rid of our fractions, it becomes on the same level as all the others that we've done. In number 2, we're going to explain how the structure of the following equations are different, and hopefully we are focusing on the difference between these pieces. So there's a very big difference noticeably in that 7, okay? In this case here, 7 is not a part of the fraction. And then in this case, you can see that 7 is on top with the x. So the 7 is part of the fraction. Okay, and what that does is it does change our steps a little bit for how we're going to approach solving this problem. Okay, so what we're going to do now is solve both of them. We'll focus on this one first. The biggest difference is our denominator, our only denominator in this is a 3. So that means in order to get rid of it, we're going to multiply everything by 3. The difference is because the 7 is not a part of that fraction, it also has to be multiplied by 3. So this is going to force our 3 and 3 simplifying down to 1, just leaving us with x. Plus, now we're going to do 3 times 7, which is 21, equals 3 times 2 is 6. And here we are going to subtract the 21 on both sides, and we get x equals negative 15. As we go to the next one, x plus 7 over 3. So we're going to do the same process. We have to multiply by 3. The only difference is because the 7 is a part of the fraction, it's not considered a different term. And since it's considered the same term, we're not going to multiply it individually by the 3. It's going to go with the whole fraction. So those 3's will simplify down to 1, and then our 2 times 3 is 6. So therefore, we have to subtract our 7 on both sides now, and we get x equals negative 1. So you can see that 7 being not a part of the fraction on the left, but being a part of the fraction on the right makes it into a very different problem. As we look at our last one here, Ali started to solve the equation 3 over 2x minus 2 equals 4 by using the multiplication property of equality. So remember, that means she took a number and multiplied everything on both sides. So in this case, she chose to multiply the 2 and obtain the equation 3x minus 2 equals 8. Explain what she did wrong and then solve it correctly. So I'm going to give you a second to take a look at this and figure out what you believe she did wrong. So hopefully you came up with the fact that she multiplied the fraction correctly by the, by the 2, not a 3. So she multiplied by the 2. And she multiplied the 4 correctly by a 2 to get 8. The difference is she has to multiply the minus 2 by a 2 to get a minus 4. So when you're going to multiply a fraction by whatever is on the denominator, you have to multiply all the terms. So that's the 3 over 2x gets multiplied by 2, the negative 2 gets multiplied by 2, and then the 4 gets multiplied by 2. So as you can see, that's the place she made the mistake. So now we're going to solve this by adding that 4 to both sides. 3x equals 12. Divide both sides by 3, and x is 4. So you can see we're spending a lot of time multiplying fractions because that's probably one of the more difficult parts of solving our equations. But this is going to be our homework video for Unit 2, or Lesson 2.